Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome someone who has done an extensive amount of work in healthcare, in branding from Florida, USA, Mary Maloney. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the invitation to the show.
Thank you. Mary is the founding chief executive officer of Revealing Genius Healthcare Brand Strategy, which is focused on positioning, messaging, and brand strategy for healthcare leaders. Mary is also the recipient of the Athena International Leadership Award for lifting up women in business. So, Mary, before we talk healthcare, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what was your inspiration to found Revealing Genius Healthcare?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the question. And I have to tell you, I've always been in the branding business almost 30 years now, focused mainly on putting healthcare companies on the map. And my journey was inspired back in 2007, 2008, 2009, but I didn't act formally on it until 2020. So it's a great example of how an idea can germinate. When back in the recession, during that time period, 2007 to 2009, there were many C-suite executives that were losing their roles, losing them unexpectedly. They had no backup plan. And I remember the first call I got from a friend of mine. And she said, you know, Mary, I know you specialize in healthcare brand strategy for companies, but can you help my husband? Can you help him with his quote unquote personal brand? And I said, well, yes, of course, anything for you. So I learned the board had actually let him go from his CEO role. And he had no idea how to position himself for his next act. So I walked him through the same process that I use for companies. And then word of mouth started to spread. And I started to doing more and more work with individuals. And that's when the brand manifesto was born. We'll talk more about that today. So I just continued working just unadvertised by word of mouth, mainly because it was wholly gratifying. I actually loved the work. And then I ended up formally launching Revealing Genius in March of 2020, right before COVID hit.
Amazing. Thank you. So let's talk about, how you are helping healthcare leaders to position themselves, to message better, and to build their personal brand. My first question, Mary, for you is, what are some of the key elements of an effective positioning for healthcare leaders?
Yes, one of my favorite subjects, positioning. I have learned that positioning is usually amongst a fiercely competitive set in a category that you want to dominate, whether it's a company or whether it's an individual. And what I've learned after all these years is that it starts with a brand manifesto. I just know in my bones, every leader should have one, every company should have one. And it consists of three very simple things. It's your purpose, your why, and your hows. It's the best place to start. Your purpose is why you exist to serve. Your why is a very pithy statement that explains at what you are the best in the world, and the transformation that you create when you're in your zone, like when you're in flow. You know what that's like. And then the hows are really important. These are non-negotiables. So in their absence, you cannot fulfill your why. This is how we show up with excellence. And it's the hows basically raise our floor. So that's what I've learned. It's really pretty simple.
Yeah, well said. And based on all the work you've done with so many leaders, what are some of the common mistakes a lot of them make?
There is one common mistake. This is the biggest one. And it's tragic because it's so easy to overcome. The biggest positioning mistake that I've experienced is that companies and individuals seem to always be in a rush. And I can raise my hand and say that, I'm guilty of that too. They're in a rush toward the assets. So for example, many companies come to me and say, oh, I need a strategic plan. or an individual come and say, oh, I need to update my resume. But they don't take the time to get grounded and really align with their why. That's the place to start. Declaring your brand, I call it a brand manifesto. Declaring that, getting really clear on that, that is the rocket fuel.
Great response. Thank you. You also speak about, defining strategic messaging. I wanted to ask you, help me understand strategic messaging when it comes to a personal brand for a leader.
For a leader, yes. So I like to talk in theory and then also talk about deliverables. So strategic messaging requires a lot of thought, but then it also requires some action, and there's deliverables that you need in order to implement the actions. So whether I'm working with a company or with an individual, it really comes down to three things. Strategic messaging is start with the brand manifesto. That's the rocket fuel. It's simple. It can be done very quickly, very swiftly. And it's amazing how many folks just don't do it. And then second is the positioning statement. And this is, most folks will recognize a positioning statement as a paragraph or a one or two sentences that clearly defines what category you want to dominate, core competencies. Companies call it their about us. Think elevator pitch. So the manifesto combined with the positioning statement is what it sets the tone and the tempo for a strategic plan. And I like to recommend 2 to 3 years. Really thinking about 2 to 3 years out. I use this really cool tool. It's from Cornell University. It's called the Z-SWOT. So it takes strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to a whole new level. And what it does, it determines very clearly with no ambiguity where a company or an individual is going to invest, defend, adapt, or withdraw. And then with these three tools, this is the strategic messaging toolbox. With these three tools, the manifesto, the positioning statement, the strategic plan, you can go to market, whether you're a company or an individual, with great confidence. It's game changing when we leverage this trifecta.
What a great response. Thank you. And what would you say is the role of storytelling when it comes to positioning and communicating your brand?
Ashutosh, I listened to quite a few of your podcasts in preparation for this meeting, and I noticed that you ask that question on almost every podcast. So I love that you asked that question because storytelling is really the name of the game.
Correct.
And I like to use the term signature story because I believe everybody has one, and it really does offer clues to what your brand stands for. I'd love to hear what your signature story is. You probably have many. One of my favorite examples is Arianna Huffington. Her signature story is actually quite scary. She was preparing to take her company public. She was in a hotel room and she fell and hit her jaw on a marble table, was rushed to the hospital, and she was paralyzed from the neck down for 2 weeks. They ran a battery of tests. They couldn't figure out what on earth was wrong with her. And then finally, after all of the assessments, you are not going to believe what the diagnosis was. She collapsed because of exhaustion. And because of that traumatic experience, it launched her quest to raise awareness about what she believes is a worldwide epidemic, and that is lack of sleep. She's written books about it. She raised $45 million to start her company called Thrive Global. She's written countless essays. Well-being is what she stands for. And it all stems from that signature story. And she tells it over and over again all the time. So I think it has an enormous place. Storytelling has an enormous place in advancing healthcare causes.
What an amazing story about Ariana Huffington, which you've shared with us. Thank you. I'm sure my viewers and listeners will take a lot of lessons and read up much more about that story. My next question is that, we've spoken about the importance of having a clear brand strategy. But my question to you is, what are the first steps that a leader needs to take to develop their brand strategy?
I would say start with the brand manifesto. You knew that was going to be the answer,
Yeah.
Ashutosh. I say get really clear.
Hmm.
Get really, really clear on articulating your purpose, your whys, and your hows. Start there. Those are the first steps, particularly if you are in transition as an individual or the company is looking to move to a next inflection point. You will join an elite group that has actually taken the time to figure that out. And when you do, no matter what doorway you walk through, you'll have a level of conviction that's palpable. And clarity is so important because I believe it gives us confidence. I don't think we lack confidence. I think we lack clarity.
Correct.
Because if you think about it, if you're clear, you're confident. And if you're confident, you have conviction. And if you have conviction, you have impact. And oh my gosh, when you have impact, you have fulfillment. You've experienced it. And when you have fulfillment, it's like game over. That is the game.
Yeah.
There is no other game.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. But the other thing that I have often seen with a lot of leaders is that they tend to confuse their own brand with the brand of their organization. And I've often said we don't realize how important that little logo of the company is on our visiting cards. I want to ask you, how can leaders align their personal brand with their organization's brand and not get confused?
Yeah. And they're interrelated but different, to your very, very good point. And I've seen it in action. I can attest that when a leader knows in their bones what they stand for, then they can look to the organization and then start inquiring, what does the organization's brand stand for? And then start to unpack, is there alignment? And if there is alignment, that's a culture where you're going to thrive. And there's some risk there, because when folks really dig deep and they think about their purpose, their whys, their hows, and then they take a look at their organization, they might find that there is misalignment and it might be time to move on. But the good news is when there's congruency, it's like no other. And one personal brand could influence the entire organization's brand.
What a great response. Thank you. And the follow-up question to that, Mary, is how important is authenticity when it comes to leadership branding?
Oh gosh, you and I could talk for hours about this very topic. I know it. I'd love to take this offline.
Yeah.
But when you think about the word, the actual word authenticity, you can hear the word author in it. So the word itself actually offers a clue to answer that question. We are the authors of our brand. Words matter. And when we speak from the heart, it resonates with others. I'll give you an example. I worked with a client, very, very successful. He worked with one of the largest Fortune 100 companies in the world, in the healthcare space in Latin America. And he retired early, he had a great career, and he went and applied for a board seat. He was shortlisted to 2, and he didn't get the position. And he went back to the board chair and asked for some feedback because he was clearly qualified. His specialty was finance and marketing, which is a unique specialty. And the board chair told him something that he said he would never forget. He said, at the end of the day, the 2 that were shortlisted, could both do the job. Both had tremendous pedigrees and things to offer. And the board chair said, I asked both of you the same question. And he said, because of her response, she got the job.
Okay.
He said to Guillermo that you fumbled the ball. And the question was this: what is your purpose?
Oh, wow.
And how does it align with our organization's brand? And he reflected on that and realized that he went back and he started talking about all the things that he had accomplished in his career, whereas she knew in her bones her purpose, her why, her hows, and she was even able to translate how she was going to be able to, and how excited she was to be able to step into a culture where her brand and the organization's brand were totally aligned. And it was contagious. It was energetic, and his wasn't. And the board chair said to him, you need to go figure out your purpose. And that's how he came to me. So authenticity in leadership could be the game changer in high stakes situations.
What an amazing story. Thank you. Let's now move on and talk a little bit about how technology and digital media is impacting brands. And my question is, how can technology and innovation be incorporated into a brand strategy for a leader?
Well, I wanted to give a shout out to, I mean, you've done 2,600 podcasts, I think, almost 25,000 followers now. Amazing. I listened to a few of them. I wanted to give a shout out to one of your guests, Heather Crank, talked about revolutionizing visual art and design with AI. It was fascinating. She talked about generative AI and animation and its use in film, which can be very applicable to healthcare because many of us are visual learners. I wanted to shout out also to Dr. Lara Feng. She talked about on your podcast, transforming healthcare with AI using insights on data. I'm a huge fan of AI. I was an early adopter. I was trying out ChatGPT. I think that AI used with the right intentions can only enhance healthcare.
Well said. Well said. And yet, Mary, when I speak to a lot of leaders, somehow there is this misunderstanding that if I have a large social media presence, I have a powerful personal brand, which means more likes and more this and more that. What are your perspectives on how important digital media is for building a brand, a personal brand?
Yes, digital media. Gosh, so I guess two things there to your good point. There is this misconception that you need a 500,000 followers to be successful. And I would argue that. You need to figure out your beloved avatar. Beloved avatar is my word for target audience or customer persona. If you think about someone who's beloved to you, you think about them all the time, you only want the best for them, you'll go the extra mile, you delight in their accomplishments, you really want them to win. If you think about that in terms of your target audience, that's who you want to write content for, only them. And you don't necessarily need millions of followers, you just need the right beloved avatar to follow you, so that you can share authentically your stories to have impact, like you do. YouTube is a great example of digital media. And nowadays it requires 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours viewed to even start monetizing the content. That's a lot. So I always come back to, I really do believe it's a leadership imperative to develop a long game strategy around an audience that you want to serve, an audience that you would love to serve, and on a topic that you stand for. Because if you have to generate that much content, it should be for someone who is beloved.
Correct. Correct.
And
Correct.
it should be on a topic
Absolutely.
that is within your zone of genius.
Very well said. So, we've been talking about personal branding, Mary, for leaders, and I know you focus on healthcare leaders, but I think everything that you're doing for healthcare leaders applies to every leader in the world. But I want to ask you one specific question for healthcare leaders, and that is that should leaders leverage patient stories, and I see doctors doing that, to strengthen their brand?
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, that's the short answer.
Hmm.
And then the longer answer is to showcase the beloved avatar. So the formula is very simple, is to showcase the beloved avatar, me too's, showcase expertise at what are you the best in the world, and the transformation for the patient. And there's no better person to tell the story than an example of your beloved avatar, who is highlighting your expertise and the transformation that occurred when they were in your presence. So absolutely, patient story is 100%.
Absolutely, I agree. Well said. So I have time for two more questions for you. For my viewers and listeners, can you give us an example of a leader or an organization that has successfully repositioned their brand? And don't give me any names, of course.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. This is very recent. Had a client, I can use her first name. Her name is Laura. She was a chief at a very large hospital system for many, many years. And she decided to launch a leadership consulting group with a partner in healthcare, which they did. And they did well, but they weren't getting the traction that they expected. And I host these Transformation Thursdays where we unpack a way to get really clear on what one offers and one's expertise. So credit to the group. There was maybe about 20 of us on the call, and we helped her to unpack her beloved avatar. Her lens was very wide in terms of who she was targeting. And then when we asked her questions, it became clear and evident that who she loved to work with the most was physicians. There's over 1 million physicians in the United States right now. That's a large universe to target. To your good point, don't need 100 million followers, just need the right ones.
Correct.
We helped her to not only reposition who she was targeting, but how she was talking about her expertise. So what she came up with was one pithy statement. I'll read it to you. It goes like this: I equip physicians, very specific, with powerful tools. And what she does best was she helps them to practice empathic communication. That was the heart and soul of her genius. And when they got it, they felt re-energized to continue to practice medicine and experience life-changing moments with their patients and care team. And she had story after story after story of physicians who were almost in tears because after using her tools, they were waking up in the morning, couldn't wait to get to work with their patients again. So it was just a little bit of tweaking, and it really worked well. And it serves her too, because she's doing what she loves.
Amazing story. Thank you. And my last question for you, Mary. For a lot of our young viewers and listeners, and a lot of them could be healthcare professionals, what would your advice be to a young professional in the healthcare world who's wanting to start building their personal brand?
I would say one thing, and that is figure out your purpose early, as early as possible. You did, because you and I can attest, for the young folks listening on the call, that your what, I'll put what in air quotes, your what will change. I mean, look at the trajectory of your career. You founded Equation Coaching. You ran a pharmacy. You're an author. You do podcasts. You've been 31 years with YPO. Like your what has changed a lot, and it will. So for young folks, expect that. But if you figure out your why, and I think your why is you want to impart wisdom.
Yeah.
You know, all there. That's what's woven through the fabric of everything that you do. Even the brand called you, your podcast. There's that cornerstone. So I would recommend figure that out, because when you do that, no matter what you decide to do, you will always be fulfilled.
Amazing. Mary, on that note and your incredible lessons, figure out your why, understand your purpose, figure out your what. And I'm going to add one more, which you mentioned during our conversation. Try and understand what your brand manifesto is going to be. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I think the amount of detail we went into in personal branding, and personal branding is something I'm very, very passionate about, because that really establishes who we are. And that's the only legacy we will leave behind in the world. Thank you for going into such amazing detail about so many different aspects of building a personal brand. I know you focus on healthcare leaders, but I think everything that you said applies to every single leader, irrespective of the industries. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.